Hey, it's Stu, and this is going to be a little bit of a scatterbrained book haul. Quite possibly, maybe my last book haul video of the season, maybe not. I mean, I still have my 2 free books every Thursday. I'm kind of winding off of Little Free Libraries. I mean, there's always something there, and then there's not, and that's part of the adventure. But I've got travel for work, and I've got a lot of work, and I got a lot of events coming up. So all my bookishness is just kind of slowing down or spinning in that way where it's going to change the way that I perceive it and engage with it. And then I have summer where I normally work very little or not at all and travel internationally, where I intend to read. However, if something else comes up for the summer, there'll certainly be reading involved, but maybe it'll look way different than how I'm reading now. Let's get started with the haul, shall we? In my last haul video, I think I talked about this Elizabeth Strout book, and I believe I remember saying that this is my second Elizabeth Strout book. I am doing this really interesting thing of hauling books of authors that I haven't read before, when I used to not do that, but there is something a little bit compelling about exploring building an author's collection. It's just maybe a little risky if you've not read the author and not sure if you want some or any of their books at past what the first one that you read. Okay, so this was Olive Again, and I remember saying I understand that this is a sequel or following the same character, should stand alone, that I don't have Olive Kitteridge, but I was willing to give this a chance anyway, given it was excellent condition, and of course, I've never paid more than $4 for a book out of thrifting. So the very next week, I traveled to a different town, somewhat distant. I had some work things to do there. Decided to hop into the Goodwill in that town because it's kind of become a thing that I do. And look what I found. I found Olive Kitteridge. So now I kind of have, a duology sort of situation, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it. This is sort of my first in this last era of thrifting, little free library hunting, reading kind of stuff that I'm doing. This is the first time I've been encountered with anything more than one book of a series, so we shall see. I will just say this. I'm really excited. I was really excited to find this, and they do make a pretty pair, even though one's hard and one's soft. I just like the way that they look together. And those feel like fall reading, and that's probably when they'll happen. Speaking of fall reading and books of authors that I've had before, I no longer have The Spectator Bird because I did donate to a little free library. And I was happy to find another Wallace Stegner. I think this is from the same thrift shop that I found that Olive Kitteridge, but I can't fully remember. But that's what I think it is. And because I did a lot of like little free library hunting, and yeah, just lots has happened. I'm busy. Anyway, Crossing to Safety is maybe his last book. It's published some almost 10 or more years later. I think the publication of Spectator Bird was 75, and this is in the 80s. And he is now in his 80s as an author. I believe this is known to be semi-autobiographical, and it's about 2 couples. Another repeat author, one I really liked. I understand that there's some controversy in her personal life, but as an author, I really liked Dear Life by Alice Munro, and was excited to find the love of a good woman in my neighborhood little free library. And this will be a repeat read. This is feels like almost companion books here, huh? Also kind of feels like another fall read for me. I think this is a novel, and Dear Life was short stories. Yeah. In the same little free library where I was definitely unhauling young adult that I had and had not read, because as I said, I'm staying pretty committed to getting rid of my young adult. I found She Who Became the Sun, Shelley Parker Chan. Before recent reads would have told you I'm not necessarily a historical fiction woman, and indeed, I think when done right, I've read some great historical fiction recently. What's coming to my mind is A Net for Small Fishes, which I enjoyed so much more than I would have ever expected. So I think this is has queer characters and themes, and it's like 1300, so definitely historical. Yeah, 1345. China. I've been in China as a setting quite a bit, so it's also a little bit fun to go through the ages, empires, and goings-ons in China. Speaking of which, I also found at the same thrift store this paperback, which is Women of Silk. There were several authors by Gail Tsukiyama, and I don't know this author, so I chose just one. I don't know if that was the right decision, if I should have chosen one of the other ones, but Women of the Silk just caught my attention, and it is also historical fiction, but in the 1920s in rural China. Speaking of another repeat author, I don't remember if I've talked about this book. Yeah, I did. I believe I did talk about the Freedom by Jonathan Fraser. I think, I'm sorry, Franzen. I think it's sitting in this stack because it just needs to be shelved, even though I have already talked about it. In case I haven't, I really loved The Corrections. I don't remember a whole lot about what The Corrections was about, as I said before, but I remember really liking it. So I'm excited for another work by this author. And this came out in 2010. Yeah, well, and it was an Oprah Book Club selection in 2010. So seems a bit chunky. Yeah, nearly 600 pages, a little bit chunky, and the font looks like something that I'm probably going to have to engage with digitally. But I found it to be a find. I kind of was out there looking for authors that I'd read before and using that kind of as parameters that I was more willing to pick up, whereas I am being more discerning. Of course, I just have a lot of books now. How Beautiful We Were by Mbolo Mbui. Yeah. Mbui. Maybe it's Mbu. In any case, apologize for the mispronunciation of anybody's name. I also apologize if this book is well known to you before. I think this author, got a Penn Faulkner, was some other work, was also an Oprah Book Club book, and okay, yeah, this is the second novel, and it's a fictional village in Africa, and it tells of people living in fear amid environmental degradation wrought by an American oil company. The publication of this book is 2021, and I now have many African authors, and I've only read a few, and I have more to read than I have read, and I'm making that mental note as I talk about this book and my intentionality of reading this book. As with anybody who hauls books, the ones that you haul, you think, oh, I'm going to read this sooner rather than later, and then they get filed away onto the shelves that sometimes denote later. So I'm making kind of a note to myself that this summer I absolutely want to make sure that there's good African author representation on my summer reading picks. And then I'll move on to another Pulitzer Prize winner. I think we had several in this stack alone. And that, I just saw this book again. I got this at a thrift store in that town that I went to, both of these. And I was compelled. I wanted to read the book that won the Pulitzer. I'm not going to lie. But I also was really drawn in by this relationship of there's a father-son, single father-son relationship in this book. And the father's an astrobiologist, and his wife dies. He becomes a single father. He has a son named Robin, who has some needs. Maybe I could even call them special needs from what I can tell. I know that there's some episode where this third grader is about to be expelled from the third grade, maybe some acts of violence. Yeah, if they're throwing a rock. And, you know, this, I think, is going to look at mental, emotional, holistic health and well-being. It's going to use science, the paradigm of science and scientific thinking, and it's certainly going to explore the love of a father and son. The next book I found was one of those book of the months. It was at the same thrift store. I was really excited about the amount of diversity that I was able to find just kind of on this small shelf at this thrift store. A Burning is by Megha Majumdar, and this setting of this novel is in India, and it's following three particular characters, and we're gonna have 3 points of view. I really like multiple points of view character exploration. Yeah. Excited for this. I found that I now have a lot of Indian and subcontinent authors some of which I was intending to get to for this Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And then, you know, I just haven't. So I will see when would be appropriate time for me to get to this book. Everything about it felt and seemed interesting to me. The publication of this book was 2020. Okay, here's another one of those authors I have, Room by Emma Donoghue. There's another more recent book out by this author. I've yet to read Room. I got Room as, you know, one of those 10 books for $5. Pretty sure I want to prioritize reading that first. However, I'm saying that for no other reason than I got it first. I didn't find this hardback to be in that great of condition, but it was, you know, of course, a very, very reasonable price, and something that I decided to just go ahead and get because, again, I'm kind of in this little phase of building a little bit of the catalogs of authors. The last book that I got at the thrift shop, yeah, this was a thrift. Some of these, yeah, these are a mix of different thrift stores from different towns and little free libraries, but this was at a thrift store. This also was another Oprah's Book Club pick, and that's The 12 Tribes of Hattie. This is historical fiction, again, 1920s Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Georgia/Philadelphia. So the eastern side of the U.S. in the 1920s. Again, feeling pretty good about the amount of diversity in that stack. So the last books I have to talk about were from my free haul for today. I get 2 free books from the Friends of the Library bookstore in my neighborhood. And then I almost always try to see if there's one that I want to buy for some reason, even though I'm like today I took 5 books to donate. I feel like I'm there to also shop around and engage in that if I'm going to go there and not just go for my 2 free books. However, the 2 free books definitely get me in the door. Really excitingly found Beautyland. I think Beautyland is one of those more recent, more hyped books, speculative fiction. Yes. And I think anyone who could be probably watching this probably watches BookTube and knows a thing or two about this, maybe even more than I. I thought it was just a great find. Look at the condition of this book. And to say that it was one of my free books, let's be honest, this is probably the pick that I will definitely commit to reading sooner rather than later. Again, I don't care if a book came out now, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, such as Mrs. Dalloway, like I just read. If it's a good book, I'm going to like it. There are some aspects of contemporary fiction that no longer kind of work. So reading it in a timely manner could be beneficial in that way. But generally, if it's a good book, it's a good book. And it's even kind of fun to try to put yourself in the contemporary times and minds of the contemporary fiction sort of book. In any case, this is speculative. So disregard everything that I just said. And it's again, a somewhat very, for my book collection, a recent release. And I see this coming in the month of June. The Female Persuasion was also picked up. This is older, 2018, kind of the time of books that I normally find in little free libraries. A bit of a chunker, and I have found this book before and said, nah, it's a little too thick for me to not know anything about it or the author. But you know what? I'm ready. I thought that for my free book, and in keeping with this beautiful rainbow and this sort of, so let's be honest, this is what kind of called me. You see that triangle, downward triangle, and do you see that downward triangle? And now I feel like they have to be companion books. Last but not least, the one that I did, well, technically there's an order of what I paid for, but I did pay for this book. I paid $4. Very new find, something I am so excited about, which is Anita de Monte Laughs, Laugh by Xochitl Gonzalez. I got all kinds of time for this book. I think this is going to end up in summer reads just because of how hectic my next week's TBR look. Like what I hope to read is probably more hectic than ever. And the time that I have to read them is probably more limited. So I don't want to feel any kind of way. I don't want to feel any kind of pressure to read. I want reading to be always my refuge, my joy, my escape, my engagement with stories other than mine to give me perspectives, and even my escape. So all that being said, doesn't this just say summer read? Indeed, I think it does. That's quite a few books to find place. I think my shelf is now full. And apart from the couple free books that I get, maybe some little free library in the neighborhood stuff, I just don't even see myself having the time to therapy shop for books at thrift stores and a therapy rummage. So I get to have a beautiful free book, full bookshelf for when I have an apartment full of guests in just a few weeks who can speculate and ooh and ah on how well I have it organized. That feels good. And yeah, like anybody who's around here hauling books, you start to think, when will I get to all these? And you want to get to like every one of them soon. And I definitely feel like that, like the impulse and the excitement and the anticipation is still very electric when I stare at this somewhat big pile of hauls from the last not much more than a week. And yeah, we're going to just leave it there and see what comes next.